So Benjamin Sesko to Manchester United is finally pretty much done. Manchester United and Leipzig are very close to reaching an agreement. The mad thing is, Manchester United just 2 years ago dropped £72 million on Rasmus Højlund, and they're ready to force him out to help fund this move. Højlund does not want to leave Manchester United. He would prefer to stay at Manchester United, but he could now be forced out to get this move over the line. INEOS have already found the Højlund replacement, and we know midfield is next on the agenda. They signed Agati for 50 million. We still want a midfielder. The feeling is a long-term Agati replacement would come next year when there's funds to go all out on a Carlos Baleba, all out on an Adam Wharton, but they want another midfielder in. And under Omar Barada's 2-year rule at Manchester United, you've got 2 years to prove yourself or you're out. Højlund didn't do enough in his second season. His first season was promising. His second season wasn't good enough. It didn't matter that Benjamin Sesko cost an arm and a leg. They got him in. It's time to get Højlund out. The plan is for Højlund to go. We spoke about that earlier. AC Milan are interested. It could be a loan. Bruno Garnacho, as soon as you disobey the manager, you're out. And one thing I've noticed about INEOS, and one big area where INEOS are changing Manchester United, is forcing people out. Garnacho disobeyed the manager, forced out. I don't know what went down with Rashford, but he got forced out. Since INEOS have come in, players that have misbehaved or fallen out with the manager have always just sort of stayed at United and all of this. But many players are being forced out, or even players like Anthony that haven't been good enough, even if we can't sell them, we're forcing them out on loan. I think it's the first time that the Deadwood players, even if they're not, it's been sold, the Deadwood players are being loaned out, they're being forced out. And this is a big change we're seeing under INEOS and we're seeing at Manchester United. So we're going to get into all the news, we're going to get into the updates. I'm going to give you the latest on Benjamin Sesko, and then we're going to talk about Højlund being forced out. We're going to talk about Agati, midfielder next. We're going to have an honest conversation about Agati and all of that. Obviously, I don't want to speak too loud because I am in like a more public setting, so I hope the audio is okay. Sorry if it does come across a bit quiet. But yeah, should we just start with the latest on Benjamin Sesko? I'm just going to get through that quickly, and then I want to talk about Højlund and Agati. But in regards to the latest on Benjamin Sesko, Florian Plettenberg, who is a very credible journalist in the Bundesliga space, he can be a bit hit and miss when it comes to non-Bundesliga stories. And, he can be someone that likes to add Manchester United's name into any old story. But for the most part, he is a good journalist, particularly when it comes to Bundesliga sources. And he said that Manchester United and RB Leipzig are now in concrete negotiations over Benjamin Sesko. An agreement is expected to be reached. Obviously, for which Romano confirmed earlier today, we've reached an official agreement with Sesko and Sesko's camp over personal terms. That is not an issue, but we're now working on more sort of situations in terms of the bid. They haven't accepted the bid. They accepted Newcastle's bid, but they haven't accepted our bid. They want us to match Newcastle's bid. We don't want to do that because Newcastle's bid was ridiculous. Sesko's officially agreed to join United. Romano has confirmed that. RB Leipzig and Manchester United are in concrete negotiations, and agreement is expected to be reached soon. So that's sort of what's been said on Benjamin Sesko. Ben Jacobs, another good source of information that's been spot on this summer, said that United are very confident they'll reach an agreement in principle with Sesko. Their 74 million package offer, which includes add-ons, meets RB Leipzig's ballpark valuation. Basically, we've met the valuation that RB Leipzig put on Sesko. We've met that, but because Newcastle bidded more, I think RB Leipzig are going to try it on and see. But I think, considering the add-ons of 4.53 million are achievable, considering they had a gentleman's agreement with Sesko that if this price was hit, he could go. But because Newcastle bidded more, they're looking for more. Man United are hopeful that their bid will be accepted. They may have to adjust the add-ons or the initial fee because they've accepted Newcastle's bid, which is a bit more, which is annoying. But Manchester United are confident their bid will be accepted. And as Romano said earlier today, Manchester United are still in negotiations over a transfer fee. Vivel is working hard. Apparently, Vivel played a big part in this deal, which is interesting to see. And Romano did add that now the next target is a midfielder. We'll have to see. Obviously, they want to just get Benjamin Sesko finalised before making a midfield move. But Romano has confirmed next on the list is a midfielder. I still think the men's and goalkeepers want to watch. But midfielders next on the list. And that, will bring us to Agati. We're going to talk about Agati because we spent 50 million on him last year. And next summer looks like we're already planning to replace him with a big midfield signing. But this summer, we still want to bring in a midfielder to go next to Bruno Kobe. And I think we're looking at this Berardi, you've got 2 years to prove yourself. They're not going to sell Agati this summer. But there is concerns internally at Man United about Manuel Ugarte, and they think he's a good player and they think he's a good squad player, but they know that we need a midfielder. They know that he's not quite the midfielder that we need. So we're going to talk about that in a second, but I think it's right that we talk about Rasmus Højlund. Imagine if we did that to Newcastle. Just to let you know, we'll never sign Tonali. Like, if we went in for Tonali, Newcastle would absolutely stick their finger up us. We've got no chance of getting Tonali, but no chance of it. He would be perfect. He would be perfect. But I feel like, do you know what we need? We need Newcastle to go and make a bid for a really good midfielder that's a progressive passer, that protects the back four, that's tall, that's physical, that's athletically good, and then INEOS will hopefully make a bid for them too. So my dream midfield option is Lucien Agomi. I think he's probably the best Baleba alternative. Could be 20 odd million pounds, which is crazy. We will talk about that, but I want to talk about Højlund because there's quite a bit being said about Højlund, but it looks like Højlund could be forced out of Manchester United. So let's talk about Højlund being forced out. Rasmus Højlund is resigned to being forced out by Manchester United if Benjamin Sesko completes his move to Old Trafford. So Sesko looks like he's going to complete his move to Old Trafford, and Højlund is now set to probably be forced out of Manchester United. He doesn't want to go, but he did say if he feels unwanted, he would leave. But then Leipzig went in for him, and according to Alex Crook, he rejected Leipzig, which is crazy. But I think we've got Xerxes, we've got Mbeumo, we've got Cunha that can all play striker, although they're not natural number 9s. Benjamin Sesko's coming in. If we're playing Champions League football, I get having both Sesko and Højlund if we're playing Champions League football. But we're not playing Champions League football, so I'm not quite sure what the need is to have both Sesko and Højlund at Manchester United. I don't think we necessarily need both if we're playing one game a week. And I think INEOS feel the same. While there's a small part of me, and I said this the other day before we got Sesko, when I was hearing that Sesko was going to be as expensive as it was, I did say 5 days ago, there is a small part of me thinking Sesko is so crazy expensive. Do we just stick with the options we have? Because we saw in pre-season that Mbeumo and Cunha can play split strikers with Bruno behind. Do we stick with the options we have? Xerxes will be back fit. Hope that Højlund makes it work. Give Højlund a third season with better players around him and go spend 100 million on a midfielder. I did suggest 5 days ago that we could go and spend 100 million on a midfielder or 80 million on a midfielder. And, we've got, I think, options to stay put, and we could maybe risk another season with Højlund. I think we could do that. Because obviously now we spent this much money on Sesko, we'll get a midfielder, but we'll probably get an Amrabat, Sabitzer type cheap midfielder. We're not getting a Carlos Baleba, we're not getting anyone fancy. But now that Sesko's in, I feel like United have spent that much money on Sesko because of confidence they're probably going to get good money for Alejandro Garnacho. But considering you spent 70 million on Højlund 2 years ago and you're now dropping another 70 million plus on a striker, it gives Højlund all the message he needs. While Højlund wants to stay at Manchester United, while Højlund's a Manchester United fan and would dream of making it work, it tells you everything you need to know. And Højlund right now might have to be forced out. I think, Sesko isn't over the line yet and nothing will be done until Sesko's over the line. But it's 99% that Sesko is going to be over the line in the next few days. Depends obviously how difficult Leipzig could make it. But I'm going to get this news up. Bear with me one sec. Here. Okay. Man United have sort of said, and David Ornstein said that there's a possibility Højlund will go. I think Højlund doesn't want to go, but I think we're now in the process of, once we get Sesko over the line, forcing Højlund out, because I think the money we'll get from getting Højlund out, even if it's under his book value, at least there's money coming in that United may put into midfield. Manchester United put 30 million aside for Liam Delap. They've now spent over double that to get Benjamin Sesko in the door. I think had we got Liam Delap for 30 million, we'd have had 30, 40 million there for a midfielder. And obviously the midfield plan, I feel like, I don't know what the midfield plan is now. I still think midfield's really important. We're going to talk about that. But I don't know what the midfield plan is now. We spent all this money on Sesko. But it is said by Chris Wheeler, Rasmus Højlund is likely to leave if a deal is reached for Sesko, either through a sale or loan. So Højlund is likely to leave if a deal is reached for Sesko. Højlund is basically, according to Luckhurst, is resigned to being forced out. Højlund doesn't want to leave. Romano said Højlund doesn't want to leave. But Højlund has basically resigned to being forced out. And Manchester United are now working on exits, sales, all of this for, of course, Rasmus Højlund. I will look at the live chat in a second. The Athletic, David Hornston, said last week there's a very good chance Højlund leaves Man United this summer. Despite Hoyland wanting to stay, Laurie Whitwell, who's a very good source of information, also said that Hoyland is more likely to leave than stay. Romano said, of course he wants to stay, of course he wants to make it work. David Ornstein said, of course he wants to stay, but he's likely to leave. If he feels that he's not wanted, he will go. I think Man United are probably going to force Hoyland out. Now, Hoyland can go on strike and say, I'm not leaving. And at the end of the day, it's not like he's on crazy wages where Man United are going to protest against it loads. I think if he was on 300 grand a week, they'd be doing everything they can to get him out the door. But I think the fact that he's not on crazy wages, if he does stay, it's not the end of the world. But we can't promise him minutes, especially with not being in Europe. We're not going to be playing as many games. So I think Hoyland will now have to look at it and go, can I beat Sesko? Does Hoyland believe that he's better than Sesko? Look, Hoyland could have a good year next year. He had a good preseason and all of that. But it's one of those sort of situations. But Hoyland has apparently sort of resigned to being forced out. We value him at 40 to 45 million. But it's likely he'll be sold for 30 to 35 because he got 4 goals last season. Like, I think there's a player there. I got behind him in his first season. I think he showed bags of potential in his first season. Last year was so poor. Tony J says Maino should stay and sell Bruno next year. Maino is a special talent, and I don't care if he doesn't suit Ruben Amorim's system. He's a level of talent that could save us 100 million that we've got to find a way to make it work. I think Bruno will be sold next summer because while Bruno is hands down our best player, and why Bruno Fernandes is an elite player, and it's good that we've got him for another year. I don't think Bruno suits Amorim's system as a 10 or a pivot player because he's not a wide 10 and he's not a pivot player. He's a number 10 in a midfield 3. But because Bruno's such a good quality player, he will still be our best player no matter where he is on the pitch, but he doesn't fully suit Amorim's system. So I think Bruno could go next year. And it could be, I think this summer has been rebuilding the attack. Cunha and Bumo, Sesko. It has been rebuilding the attack. Next summer's rebuilding the midfield. And that's what I'm saying. No one is safe. Look, I don't like how INEOS have sacked all the dinner ladies, all this and that, and then gone and spent all this money on Sesko when they were playing broke. Yeah, it's not right. And I have concerns around INEOS. But at the end of the day, they're putting money into the club. They've employed better people in Wilcox and Barada, and they're being ruthless, which is what we need. I have concerns around INEOS, but they're a hell of a lot better than the Glazers. And right now, Rashford, Garnacho, and Hoyland out of here, and Bumo, Cunha, Sesko in. Do you know what's mad? This time last year, what was our best front 3? Garnacho on the right, Rashford on the left, Hoyland up top. This time last year, and we were quite happy with Hoyland this time last year, but this time last year, our best front 3 was Garnacho on the right, Rashford on the left, and Hoyland up top. That was our best front 3. And we didn't think that was too much of an issue, despite Rashford being in poor form. This time last year, Garnacho ended the season well, Hoyland showed promise. And we this time last year, I think we were quite happy with that, but we wanted an Elise to improve that. We needed improvement. Of course, yeah. Those 3 players have been replaced. What would have been our best front 3 a year ago, because we didn't get Elise, had been replaced in one window. You know how Liverpool, when they finished 5th under Klopp, then went and got McAllister, Gravenberch, Endo, Szoboszlai in one window while getting rid of Milner, Lallana, Keita? It reminds me of that. Liverpool sold 4 midfielders and brought in 4 midfielders in one window, and they went from 5th to title challengers, but then fell off the last month of Klopp's final bit at Liverpool. This just reminds me of what Man United are doing. I'm not saying we're going to be title challengers, but we've gone and sold Rashford, Garnacho, basically. Hoyland set to go. Sancho and Anthony will be forced out, and Cunha and Bumo Sesko's coming in. Like, this is what we want from Manchester United. This is the ruthlessness. We didn't score enough goals last season. We are changing the attack. That's what I love to see from Manchester United. And Barada has this thing, I still believe that Hoyland will be a good player and have a good career. But Barada has this thing where he has 2 years to prove himself. You have 2 years to prove yourself or you're out. Anthony was in his 3rd season and they just were like, nah, go out on loan. If this was Hoyland's first season, I think we'd give him another year. We'd still be signing a striker because he probably should have had a striker to come in and help him when he first came in. But I think we'd be giving him another year. Agate is getting another year because it's his first season, and we also need legs in midfield. And while a lot of people don't like Agate has had some very good games for us. Agate, when he's used in the right role, is a very good player. Now, Agate, for us, we need someone that plays as a 6 that can take the ball under pressure and progress play. He can't do that. Agate in the more advanced areas when he's pressing high, winning back the ball, very good player. Agate ground coverage, very good player. There'll be games where Agate will be really good for us, But in general, in a system, we need a midfielder that can actually progress play and isn't a liability in our half. Agate on the ball in the opposition's half, good player. He is a good player. Agate on the ball in our half, liability. Agate off the ball, good player. But Agate, we're looking at progressive midfielder. He's a liability. So we will have to look to upgrade that. Now, we won't have the funds to go big on midfielder to next summer. And this summer is 3 new attackers in. Next summer's Man United's big overhaul, because I think Bruno will go next summer. I think if Maino doesn't do well enough, we've seen what INEOS have done with Garnacho, Rashford, Højlund. If Maino doesn't do well enough this season, they could sell him. Now, I don't want to sell Maino. I think we should build around Maino. I think Maino has one of the highest seasons in football. But what I'm saying is this time next year, Maino could be gone, Agate could be gone, Bruno could be gone. Because this time last year, if I said to you guys, Højlund, Rashford and Garnacho would all be sold next summer. If I said to you a year ago, Højlund, Rashford and Garnacho would all be sold next summer and Sesko, Cunha and Abuma would be coming in and we'd have finished 15th, most of you wouldn't believe me. I think people would have believed the Rashford being sold, but everyone would have been like, but no, INEOS put Højlund and Garnacho and their players are players they like and see untouchable with Maino. Do you remember that? Remember that? There was a report that came out a year ago that they love Højlund, they love Garnacho, they love Maino. Clearly they don't. Clearly they don't. So I think that's an interesting thing. So I wanted to talk about that and all of that as well. But Maino could even go next year. Not that I'd want it to happen. I love Maino. I think he's a fantastic player, and I think Amrin needs to find a way to get the best out of him. But that's what I'm saying. It's crazy. We need to remember Agate didn't have a proper preseason last year. Came in late. By the way, I don't think Agate is anywhere near as bad as people make out. As you've mentioned, he's worked with Amrin, which has helped too. Agate, we needed legs, and he brought much needed legs. In the games versus Liverpool and Arsenal next season, Agate was really important because he was giving us defensive stability. When we played Agate and Casemiro together last season, we had defensive stability. The problem was they were not progressive and we were struggling to play out. Agate, for me, if you signed him for 25 million as a bench player, I think he would have been good. But he's not the level we need to start week in, week out in the Premier League, because while he's, I think, as an 8, really good, we need him to operate as a 6, and he doesn't have the ability on the ball to break line and resist the press to operate as a 6. If Agate was like Kobbie Mainoo on the ball, we wouldn't need a midfielder. If we moulded Agate and Kobbie Mainoo into one player, Kobbie on the ball, Agate off the ball, we probably wouldn't need that midfielder so much. But we need somebody like a Carlos Baleba, who we're not going to get. So I'm looking at Lucien Gomez, can receive the ball from deep, but also do what Agate does off the ball and bring athleticism, bring a bit of height to the midfield as well. We were losing a lot of duels versus Everton. Agate was so poor. This is the mad thing about Agate. He's inconsistent. If you play him in a more aggressive, higher up midfield role, like West Ham or Bournemouth, where he was arguably one top 3 players on the pitch in the Bournemouth game, he was unbelievable. You can see there's quality there. But the minute you ask Agate to do the role of what you want your 6 to do, recycle possession, pick it off the centre-backs, he's a liability. Fantastic in the first 2 preseason games, absolutely fantastic. Everton, shock him. And Everton's reality check of, we know there's a good player in Agate, we know he offers things, but he's not what we need in a 6 because he got caught out versus Everton. He could be a good player to come on. He's a good player for depth, but we need a long-term replacement there, We need a long-term replacement. Douglas Luiz is a realistic replacement name for this year. We might need to do what we did with Amrabat 2 years ago. We brought in Amrabat on loan just for another body, stopgap signing, Amrabat Sabitzer. Because we spent all this money on Benjamin Sesko, if we sell Højlund, we sell Garnacho, maybe there's funds for a 30, 40 million midfielder, but if there's not, we may need to do a stopgap. Now, obviously, there's talk about AC Milan working on a deal for Højlund, but I do want to talk a little bit about sort of INEOS and this sort of brutal approach they're having. Let me share this with you. So, this is what I wanted to share. Manchester United have been assessing their options in midfield. Ruben Amorim is keen to add more dynamism to the middle of the park. So that's what's been said. Manchester United have been assessing their options in midfield. Amorim's keen to add more dynamism. Man United want a midfielder. Amorim wants a midfielder. I don't know if spending all this money on Sesko is going to change this. We spent 50 million on a midfielder last year, and we still want a number 6. We still want, and we're still craving a proper Moises Caicedo, Sandro Tonali, Carlos Baleba type midfielder. We can't get a big midfielder this summer. Cool, but we still want a midfielder that's going to bring dynamism. But still looking for that. And I think this is Agate's second season where he's got to prove himself. He's got to prove himself, because we gave Højlund the patience for the first season. He didn't do enough in the second season. He looks like he's going to be forced out for Sesko. If we bring a big midfielder in, Agate may stay if we can't sell him, but he may be forced out to make way for a big new midfielder. Because let's look at this. Signed for 50 million, a key INEOS signing last year. Worked under Amram, familiar with his style, but we're already scouting new midfielders despite his arrival. I think regardless if Agate was good or not, we'd still be looking at midfielders for next year, because Bruno could go. We need a bit of depth there. You know, Eriksen's gone, Casemiro is aging, Bruno could go. I think we'd be looking at midfielders regardless if Agate was prime Iniesta when he joined us or not. But we look at Højlund being replaced after 2 years. We're now, you know, going big on a midfielder next season. The belief is that this season was about the attack, and we can get a midfielder and goalkeeper in good. But next summer will be about midfield, because it will be long-term Eriksen replacement, long-term Bruno replacement, long-term Casemiro replacement. What's going to happen with Kobe? What's going to happen with Guy? Because INEOS have proven they can get 3 attackers out and 3 attackers in one window, 60, 70 million attackers. We didn't think Man United were capable of that. So next window could be Casemiro, it could be Bruno. Hopefully not. Could even be Maino. Hopefully not. But this time last year, I'd have never thought Garnacho would have gone, and he's gone. I thought Garnacho would have been untouchable. I never thought he would have been gone. He's gone. But we could see INEOS move on to Agate because his second year not done enough. We could see these midfielders be moved on next year. We could see 3 midfielders come in next year and 3 go out. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm saying it's different under INEOS. We are changing under INEOS. I feel like nobody's safe. My point by saying nobody's safe is, like, look at it. Højlund, Garnacho were in INEOS's 5 untouchable players, according to reports last year. You know, INEOS had 5 players they saw untouchable, like Maino, Højlund, Garnacho. Maino, Højlund, Garnacho were 3 players last summer that were not up for sale, that INEOS believed in. They wanted to build a project around, according to reports. And 2 of them are going to be sold a year later. So I feel like that's what it says. It says these players we thought were untouchable, part of the project. No one is safe at United. Things are changing. I mean, the 2 safest players for me at Manchester United right now are Lenny Yoro and Amad Diallo. Apart from the new signings, Lenny Yoro is probably the safest player at Man United. Don't think he's going anywhere. But it is, no one is safe. And there was a report that came out 2 months ago to just say literally no one is safe. I mean, you'd assume Amad and Lenny Yoro are untouchable. But I don't even think De Ligt's 100% safe, and we signed him last year. Max Rabi's a great player, but I think if we got a good bid, they could do something. Delo, I don't think he's 100% safe. You know, the players, like the only players I think at Man United that aren't new signings that are 100% safe, probably Dorgu, Yoro, and Amad. I think most players are safe. I think Maino is pretty safe. I think De Ligt is pretty safe. Max Rabi's pretty safe. But we know Anana's not very safe. We just aren't getting offers for him. We know there's players at this club like Casemiro. We'd like to get rid of him. We're not getting offers for him. Do you know what I mean? I think if a 40 million offer came in for Mason Mount, they'd accept it. Not that someone's going to do that, but just ruthlessness. And Barada has this 2 years to prove yourself or you're out. And I like that approach from Barada. I like that ruthlessness from Omar Barada. You've got 2 years to prove yourself or you're out. No immediate exit for Agate, but he's got 2 seasons to prove himself. If Agate doesn't do enough this season, he could be pushed out. Højlund's likely being sacrificed for Sesko. We'll have to see what happens with Højlund in his exit, but he's now expected to go and be forced out potentially. It's mad. I think INEOS are just saying you've got to perform, you've got 2 seasons to do it or you're out. And I like that there's an overhaul going. We obviously haven't sold anyone yet, so this is all talk. We're not good at selling. We haven't been good enough at selling this window. But I like the ruthlessness in this overhaul. Now, I needed just to do a short live stream, but I will be back with a 10-minute roundup tonight. So big up everyone tuning in. I'm going to wrap up the live stream here. Thank you for watching. Bye.